Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, and we have a lot to get to on tonight's show as we're finally seeing some movement among some big prospects in the Orioles farm system with Heston Kjerstad's promotion to AAA Norfolk, highlighting the news that came out Monday. We also have some promotions from last week to discuss, and the Florida Complex League and Dominican Summer League seasons are underway, so we're going to talk about the Orioles teams down there and some of the prospects you'll want to keep your eye on over the next couple of months. But first, we're going to start off this episode as we'd like to start off our episodes by welcoming new members of our Patreon community. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bob.
Yeah, we had quite a few additions over the past week. I guess Patreon rolled out those 7-day free trials and wish they would have done it sooner. People are taking advantage. Hopefully they're enjoying what they're seeing. But our new guys are George Lesher, Danny Fitzmaurice, Ryan Miller, Joe Adams, Cole Sims, and Thomas Carroll. Thank you all for joining. Hope to see you in the WhatsApp group over the next few days and weeks.
Absolutely. And as a reminder, you can sign up for Patreon for as little as $3 a month. You can sign up for that 7-day free trial and then join afterwards for as little as $3 a month. And at the $5 and $10 levels each month, you will get exclusive bonus daily content and monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list, among some other perks. With that, now we'll get into the big news of this week, which is the promotion of Heston Kjerstad and Easton Lucas from AA Bowie to AAA Norfolk. And for Kjerstad in particular, it has seemed obvious for a while that he is more deserving of a promotion. In 46 games at Bowie, Kjerstad slashed .310, .384, .576, giving him a .960 OPS with 11 homers, 10 doubles, 23 RBIs, and a WRC plus of 157. This comes on the heels of Kjerstad winning the Arizona Fall League's MVP honors last fall and then having an excellent run in Major League Spring Training with the Orioles. We'll get into Lucas more in a minute, but Nick, I want to start with you about Kjerstad. The numbers really speak for themselves, but what stood out to you about him during his time at Bowie?
I mean, just how, like, everything you kept hearing about Kjerstad, about why the Orioles selected him with that pick. And it was a pretty unpopular pick at that time, that 2020 draft. And it turns out, like, a lot of the positives you saw about Kjerstad and a lot of things the Orioles were pushing out of why they went this route with Kjerstad, what they like about him, we're seeing all of that now. I mean, you rattled off some of the numbers, and honestly, to me, the most impressive number continues to still be the 15% strikeout rate. It's absurd. I mean, I don't read a ton of MLB Pipeline, not on Pipeline very much when I'm looking at prospect stuff, but they did nail this Heston Kjerstad thing back when he was in the Arizona Fall League. I think it was Jim Callis, one of them, who was talking to scouts, and they were like, look, Kjerstad, the strikeouts, the high strikeout rate in the Arizona Fall League is not anything to be worried about. I'm like, it's really high though. And he did strike out a decent amount last year. I'm like, I don't know. Is this like a power hitter who's going to, hit 30 home runs, but, have a Kyle Stowers-esque strikeout rate as he moves up to this AA level competition? And turns out those scouts are right. There was definitely nothing to worry about with that strikeout rate. And that's what's been most impressive to me. And it's just been consistent. I think he didn't have, obviously, we don't have to go into the whole backstory. Again, everybody knows his whole medical history at this point. But last year, even, he got the late starts because of the hamstring injury in spring training, right when his first season of pro ball was about to begin, finally, after 2+ years. And then he gets to high A, and I think found his first struggles, but I think he was just kind of mentally and physically just kind of wearing down. And so he got that fresh reset, that good Arizona air, I guess, that clean, thin air out there to start driving the ball. It worked. He comes back fully healthy, ready to go, and we're seeing what Heston Kjerstad can do on the field, and it's pretty magical, if being honest.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Something must have clicked from the time Aberdeen season ended and the AFL started, because he's been just red hot ever since. I don't think he's had a bad week since that time, including Major League Spring Training. He made a splash at Arizona. He made a splash at spring training, and he came out hot. Mike Elias was on Masson early in the year on an Oriole game and saying if he continues to hit like this, he won't be in Bowie long. And here we are. So it shouldn't be much of a surprise. I feel like the only thing that was, debatably keeping him down would be, is there room for him in Norfolk? But especially with all the injuries to Cowser, Stowers, Haskin, got O'Hearn, and now this week Lester being up at the Major League Club, Cowser potentially going up there soon. There's more room for him, and like we've been saying, they can make room for him. He plays first base, DH, as well as corner outfield. So it's not a surprise, but it's exciting just to see that he basically got less than a full season's worth of plate appearances, yet here he is already in AAA, kind of making up time for the missed time that he had those 2 years with myocarditis. I think the one thing you would be worried about is that his walk rate is only 7.3% in AA, but at the same time, if that 15% strikeout rate is real or anything close to it, then that is much less of a concern because the power is just going to be more consistent. And it's not like he even had a high BABIP. 324 is pretty average, I feel like. And he was batting 310 and 266 ISO, which is really high. So, yeah, really nothing to be concerned or mad about whatsoever with his stats to date. It's going to be exciting as he hits AAA. We saw it last year with Westberg and Gunnar. We know once you're in AAA and you're performing, the fans start calling for you. So I think we're going to see that very soon as long as he's performing. And maybe we will, maybe we won't see him in 2023, but he's right on the doorstep now.
I mean, fans are already calling for Kjerstad to reach the major leagues. If he goes out to a hot start, Lord have mercy, it's going to be obnoxious.
You both kind of touched on good points there, which is the strikeout to walk numbers, because it seems like going back to Kjerstad's days at Arkansas, we've heard about the strikeouts. Strikeouts are going to be high. He's going to hit for power. The strikeouts are going to be high. AA, they weren't. But as Bob noted, he was pretty aggressive, low walk rate. I don't see a strikeout rate just under 16% being sustainable for a guy with that much power when he goes up against AAA pitching. But where do the two of you see him kind of settling in as he moves up in that area?
I mean, it's tough to tell because, I mean, he had a 17% in low A, but that makes sense because he was obviously just getting his feet under him. He dominated that level. Then it went up to over 25% in high A, and now it's 15%. So I guess if he's around 20%, that is very good. A power hitter could, as long as you're under 25, I think you're in pretty good shape. And yeah, if he's going to be considerably under 25, then he's not going to be a Kyle Stowers with that swing and miss in his game and the power to go with it. He's going to be a power and average hitter more so than just a guy that's trying to run into one. He's going to be a guy who is looking to bat 280 or better.
Yeah, I could see that. The walk rate is a little concerning, and you wonder where that's going to fall up at the AAA level. But yeah, I mean, and we'll see how it begins. We saw this last year with, Colton Cowser, and he got the call up to AAA, and the strikeouts were through the roof. It took him, he was in AAA. He ended the year, a couple of weeks there with Norfolk, and the numbers were getting a little bit better, but then the season ended. Comes out this year, and it took him, about a month before he really started settling in, and now he's putting up those video game-like numbers again. So it took him about 2 months worth of competition. It's taken Connor Norby. I mean, he finished last year hot, but it took him about 2 months into this season, and now he's hitting almost 300 right now with showing more home run power, looking better out there in the box. So it took him about 2 months as well. I mean, I would not be shocked here if it takes Kjerstad 2 months. Like, don't be alarmed. This is just kind of the pattern a lot of these guys are taking. And Norby and Cowser, both two guys with excellent hit tools and great eyes at the plate. So yeah, if Kjerstad can keep that strikeout rate between like 15 and 20%, and he's hitting respectably out of the gates, yeah, I mean, it becomes more real to me, and I could definitely start to see him like, all right, this guy could reach the major leagues. I don't know what has to happen at the major league level. That's a whole puzzle in and of itself, trades, whatever. But if there is a spot, yeah, I could definitely see Heston Kjerstad reaching the major leagues this year. But even with that 7% walk rate, I mean, he's at a 383 on base percentage. Like the guy got on base. The guy did everything right down in AA. I'm excited to see him in that lineup.
Yeah, in the 2020 draft classes, Vic notes here in the comments. Solid, looking pretty solid right now because you've got Kjerstad and Jordan Westbrook at AAA. Hudson Haskins should be back there soon as he recovers from an injury. Kobe Mayo. That's right, yeah, this week. And Kobe Mayo raking down at Bowie right now. It probably won't be a whole lot longer before he's in Norfolk.
Yeah, it's funny to. I kind of forgot that Haskin and Kjerstad were in the same draft class because it feels like Haskin's been in the system forever, and then Kjerstad kind of just feels like he sprinted up the ladder the last year, literally. Um, yeah, that's gonna be fun. If Norfolk's healthy, they're insane. They're ridiculous. The talent level there.
Yeah, I mean, you're going
Well,
to now an outfield with Kjerstad, Kauser, Haskin. Daz Cameron is still down there as well. You don't really want to take too many at bats away from him, I don't think. And even at first base, you got Lewin Diaz, who is having a phenomenal season down there that nobody's talking about. I mean, he's not a prospect, but I mean, he's depth, but still, he's having a phenomenal season. So it will be interesting to see if Kjerstad gets immediate, like full-time playing time down there in Norfolk, or how they sprinkle him in as well. As Vivek mentioned, Kyle Stowers, I've forgotten all about Kyle Stowers, if I'm being completely honest there. Hopefully he's back soon. Like, it's a stacked roster, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We know Kauser is on the doorsteps of the major leagues, but how else do they shake up this roster? That's what I'm going to see. There are going to be more moves have to be made in the next couple of weeks. You can ease Kjerstad into this, but after like a week or two, something big's got to give, I feel like.
yeah, and before we talk about Easton Lucas, I should mention Colton Cowser came off the IL over the weekend and hit the ball very well in 2 games. Now, he didn't play the full game on either Saturday or Sunday, but I believe it was a combined 4 for 6 in those 2 games with a home run. So, showing no signs of rust as he comes off the IL. And we know a lot of Orioles fans kind of have the Colton Cowser watch on right now, especially with Cedric Mullins hurt in the major leagues.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it might have been actually 4 for 5. Not to nitpick that, but he had double, a walk, a home run. I think in his first 2 at bats, he had RBI singles or a single and an RBI single. I mean, yeah, it didn't seem like he missed a beat at all. And you start to wonder. The Orioles are coming home this Thursday against Kansas City Royals, and then they have a home series against the Blue Jays Tuesday through Thursday. Could he make his major league debut at home at some point over that homestand? I don't know. It might be a little quick, but he seems like a guy that's going to be like a Gunnar or an Adley, where he's not coming up to be Taron Vavra, Kyle Stowers, and play 2 or 3 times a week. When he's up, I think he's up playing most days, if not every day. And especially with Mullins out, I think they could use his defense and his own base. I mean, Aaron Hicks has been legendary in his first 3 games with the Orioles, but you don't want to rush him back. But man, he just did not look like he was rusty at all, and they're coming home soon. So I'd love to see it. I'm not gonna get my hopes up, but would be nice.
Yeah. I'm not getting my hopes up because Aaron Hicks has played so well, and he's got the injury. They didn't even let him play 2 full games. Was that Saturday or Sunday when he came back? So I don't know. It's something big has got to happen. There's too much talent on this roster, but there are legitimate holes. This is going to go down a whole nother rabbit hole if we don't just end it. But Kauser, phenomenal. He's back. He's fully healthy, and they're going to make room for him at some point. He is going to be up here. I think he is a guy that is going to stick around on this roster for right now. I don't see him being one of the guys traded, if I'm being completely honest right now. I think he can fill that role because his defense in center field is something. I don't want to say it's like better than people give it credit for. I just don't think people talk about his defense out in center field a lot, but it's good. And I think it's been most impressive this year, just to my eyeballs. So yeah, maybe we'll see. That homestand might be quick, but next 2 weeks, I could see something happening.
Let's talk about Easton Lucas now. He is certainly a big addition to Norfolk's bullpen after a stellar run at Bowie, 17 innings over the first 2 months down there, struck out 24 batters in that span while walking just 4 and posting a 1.59 ERA. Lucas probably should have been on Norfolk's roster to start this season. He was solid for the Bay Sox last year, pitched very well in the Arizona Fall League, but sent back to Bowie basically because of depth and went down there and I think pretty much did everything you could ask of him. Lucas was acquired by the Orioles after the 2019 season in exchange for Jonathan Villar. Now he's one level away from the major leagues. So, Nick, I know that you've been hyping up Easton Lucas for a while, so I want to start with you here on this one. Pretty clearly deserved this promotion. What do you think the expectations should be for him going forward?
I think they're gonna. It'd be interesting because the comments we heard over the Arizona Fall League, like, could he be a starter? But he has not made a single start since he joined this organization. It's been all out of the bullpen. So I don't see the Orioles going that route. But he's a lefty option. He throws the ball hard. He's got multiple pitches. Right now, he was having a career high in 17 innings. So smaller sample size, but I mean, he was trending towards a career high strikeout rate, a career low walk rate. The ground ball rate was in like the 30 something percent range his career. It's up to 56% right now this year in Bowie. That's huge. 1.59 ERA. The FIP is 2.71, XFIP 1.84. So, I mean, the FIP's a little bit higher, but that's still respectable. Yeah, 26-year-old lefty who can give you 2 innings, certainly if you need it. I think if he had just won a AAA, there's the new baseball, that whole grip there. But something else too that I heard, I think it was on Rates and Barrels, they were mentioning this kind of in passing, and I was like, I never thought about this, and I wonder, I don't know if it's affecting Grayson. That's a whole side story. I don't want to go down there, but something to think about. The comment was just like with the Hawkeye calling balls and strikes down there in AAA now, that strike zone a little bit tighter. And so I guess walks are up. More guys are having higher walk rates in AAA right now. So something to keep in mind, in the back of mind, if you're box score watching or something. But I think this is a guy a lefty with good walk numbers, good ground ball rates. He could potentially be someone who is an option down the road.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, he'll be 27 before the season's over. So he's kind of closer to that Yinier Cano caliber of an older prospect, relief prospect. But all I know is Bruce Zimmerman and Keegan Aiken are out of options starting next year. So I think you got a Keegan Aiken replacement right here in Easton Lucas potentially. I mean, Nick Vespe's already in AAA. I'd like to see him get a nice run at the majors this year at some point. And then I think Lucas kind of just slips into that Vespe role of the best lefty in the Tides bullpen, potentially, unless I'm just forgetting someone, and I'm not talking about starters, DL Hall. I just think he's a guy that, again, he probably should have started this season in AAA, but the depth and the talent logjam, I mean, he's a guy that'll be there. If he's healthy and available at the right time, that an injury happens, he could make his major league debut this year. But I think would he be picked up in the Rule 5 draft? Would they protect him going into next year? I guess we'll have to talk about that in a few months, but let's see how he does in AAA the rest of this season. And yeah, Jonathan VR trade, never die.
It is worth noting that Lucas was Rule 5 eligible last offseason. Seemed like a reasonable candidate to be protected ultimately was not chosen in the major league phase of the Rule 5 draft. So if he goes out and pitches well for a second straight season, that is going to make that conversation a lot more interesting. But as Bob said, it's something we'll have to dive into a few months from now. We'll go back to last week when, after our show was recorded Monday night, a few promotions were announced Tuesday morning as Douglas Hodo and Creed Willems were promoted from Delmarva to Aberdeen. And it feels like we should start with Willems because we had really been talking about the strides he had made offensively over the first few weeks of the season. After struggling for much of last year at Delmarva, Willems came out of the gate hot for the Shorebirds, batting .302 with a 1056 OPS and 8 homers over his first 120 plate appearances. He did so while walking 20 times and striking out 29, all the while continuing to play pretty solid defense behind the plate when he was back there, mixing in some first base as well because the Shorebirds were having to find innings behind the plate for him and his teammate Samuel Basayo. He now joins Aberdeen's roster when the three of us thought that it might not, be an immediate promotion for Willems just because he is younger and because they already had 2 pretty good catchers there in Silas Ardoin and Adam Retzbach, but he gets to jump. And Bob, I'll start with you here. Again, another situation where I think the numbers speak for themselves, especially with Willems there in his second stint at Delmarva. How much does his stock jumped in the last 2 months?
I think pretty hugely. Yeah, I think you're seeing him enlist as far as young players with good barrel rates and exit velos and walk rates. Like he's in a teenage, like, well, I don't think he's a teenager anymore. I think he just turned 20, but he's in that very young player at a level where he's well above the age curve and performing extremely well. And I think he hit a home run in his first official at bat, so that's always cool to see. Yeah, Aberdeen's tough. He's going to struggle there. I would guarantee it. I don't think he's going to be having a 1,000 OPS with the Ironbirds, but as long as he's just continuing to, show that his walks and strikeouts and just his whole game is not a fluke, which we know it's not, that he can continue to play the same way at a higher level and with lesser numbers. And now he's got to work with a whole new staff. That's a whole new challenge for catchers as they go up levels. He's got to learn a whole new pitching staff, so that could, make his focus on the offensive game slip a little bit. But maybe they'll let him DH a little bit more to help offset that. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's interesting because I think I was less than 12 hours out from saying that he was probably going to be in Delmarva till the All-Star break on our Top 50 Update Patreon show, and then he got announced to be going up to Aberdeen. So happy for him. It's pretty cool that you got Jackson Holliday, Creed Willems, and Frederick Bencosme, all 19, 20-year-olds performing in that Aberdeen lineup. It's fun. It's a fun time right now.
Yeah, I think that's one of the bigger points too. It's like he put up huge offensive numbers in Delmarva, but moving up to high, it's not just facing better quality starting pitching. He is a catcher, so yeah, he has to learn an entire new pitching staff. I'm sure he's familiar with some of those guys he probably caught last year or something, but yeah, keep that in mind as well now that he moves up. But I think that's the thing, and Vivek makes a good point too. I was specifically going to mention Silas Ardoin. I mean, that's first another Texas boy, so 2 Texas kids. I'm sure that's going to be plenty of fun conversations. I'm sure a close bond can form there. But I mean, Silas Ardoin was touted as one of the best defensive catchers in last year's draft class. So a good guy that Creed can learn from up there. But I think we get that question all the time about Creed. Is he legit? Is that breakout legit? And for me, what kind of put the nail in this as far as yes, he is, was actually today. I don't know if you guys saw the article, Baseball America, Jeff Ponce, friend of the pod, put out 10 hitters in the minors with impressive underlying data. Just 10 from all across the league. And there were 2 Orioles on that list, Creed Willems and Samuel Basayo. So 2, not just Orioles prospects, but 2 Orioles catching prospects on that list, which was amazing. But he's right here from Jeff's article. I mean, average exit velo, 91 miles per hour with a 105 mile per hour, 90th percentile exit velo, max EV 108. He says the contact rates could be better, but his chase rate is really good and the swing decisions are sound. So yeah, I think he's very legit at the plate. The underlying data backs that up. That's why he was promoted. He's very good behind the plate. He's not moving from behind the plate. Like, stop asking that. He's not moving anytime soon. It's a legitimate prospect here. And I think among the 3 of us, I know Bob was the highest one. He shot him up his prospect ranks earlier on. I've been more hesitant, but I don't know. I think he's getting another bump here and when we update July 1st.
Yeah, so Willems actually just turned 20 yesterday, so happy birthday to Creed Willems. But Bob, you were pretty aggressive moving Willems up your personal list early on this year. So I guess to you, some of the things that have come out maybe aren't surprising.
Well, it's still nice to see, right? The reason I did is not just because, he was putting up these numbers. What stood out to me was just the way that he halved his strikeout rate and doubled his walk rate. To me, that's like a surefire sign that whatever they're working on swing decisions wise, it's working. So that was to me oh, okay, that stands out because that will, I think those numbers, especially the strikeout rate, will it'll normalize pretty quickly. So it just seemed real, and then the more time went on, the more real it's been. And yeah, it's nice to see the recognition. And yeah, happy birthday, Creed. I know you're listening.
We'll talk about Hodo now for a moment. The 6th-round pick by the Orioles out of Texas last year. Hodo was noted at the time of the draft by a lot of national outlets for his defense and for his ability to get on base. And he flashed that during his time at Delmarva. playing a pretty solid center field while batting .255 with a .403 on base percentage and a walk percentage of 17.9. Now, he did strike out in over 31% of his plate appearances, but nonetheless, he put together a very good start at Delmarva, earned that promotion to Aberdeen, and in fact, walked 4 times in 6 games during his first week at the Ironbirds while striking out 3. So we know Hodo is a patient hitter, good defender in the outfield. Nick, what is your reaction to the promotion, and how do you see Hodo fitting into Aberdeen's plans going forward for this season?
I think he's going to be really interesting to watch just because I think he's someone who you mentioned the strikeout numbers and some of his walk numbers there. He struck out more than you like, I think, going back to his days at Texas. But like the 400 on base percentage in Delmarva last year and then doing it again this year is impressive. I think I remember right after the draft, someone reached out, someone DM'd us, someone connected to Hodo, not a family member. So, it's not dad trying to hype him up. But it was like, he's going to play. And he told us like, he's going to play all over the outfield. He's going to impress you. But if the Orioles can fix the swing and miss, which is an issue, he's going to be a pretty solid value pickup for this team. And so far, so good. I mean, I think I'm trying to think who is in Aberdeen's outfield right now. I don't have the roster pulled up in front of me. I know you got Judd Fabian. I'm sure Judd Fabian could probably get to Bowie fairly soon. And then you got Beavers, and Trimble was on the IL there. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be an everyday corner outfielder for Aberdeen, and we'll see what he can do. But if the batting average can tick up and he can lower those strikeouts, he's right there. He didn't crack our top 50, did he, in our last updates? Or
just
did he?
missed, I believe.
He's right outside the top 50. So become a patron, get the full new top 50. So I think, if he plays well here in high A, like this is another guy you can add to this mix. Another outfield prospect you can add to this mix here is another top 50 prospect.
Yeah, this was a promotion that made way too much sense. I mean, he's in the same class as the guys like Beavers and Fabian where, he could have probably started the season in high A Aberdeen and been okay. But I guess with Trimble, unfortunately, he got hurt again, and I think they wanted to give Isaac Bellany another run. It just made sense to promote him now. Adam Crampton, another college guy, he's struggling a little bit, but, again, I wouldn't be surprised if he got up to high A this year either. But for Hurdo, he's going to give you great defense. He's going to get on base, can steal bases. Yeah, they haven't fixed the swing and miss yet based on the strikeout rate, but he's hitting for more power, hitting more doubles. So, yeah, I think he's an interesting guy to follow. He kind of reminds me of a Zach Watson type from a few years ago, with obviously a way different hit profile, walks up, power down, but just good defense and a single flaw in his offensive game that, if it's fixed, could be a really good low-key late draft signing.
Would you say it's fair to put Hodo maybe in that tier of outfield prospects that are you leave them in the mix for us in the top 50 because they seem to be high floor guys like Dante Williams, who we're actually going to talk about a little bit later on in this show, who have struggled offensively but can play excellent defense, can get on base. Do you think Hodo's kind of in that mix right now?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, just defensively alone, that raises his value. And I mean, it really is just the strikeouts. He has yet to hit a home run since the Orioles drafted him, but the power's there. He does have that power. It just hasn't translated to over the fence power yet. So yeah, I could see that for sure.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me as well.
We'll go now to preview the Orioles short season leagues, which got underway on Monday with the start of the 2023 campaigns for their 2 Dominican Summer League teams, the Orioles Orange and the Orioles Black, as well as their club in the Florida Complex League down in Sarasota. And we'll start with the Dominican Summer League, where I think the big headline for this season is going to be Luis Almeida, who was signed by the Orioles over the offseason to a club record bonus for an international prospect. Almeida, as you have probably heard before, has a very unique background. He was actually born in the United States, moved with his family to the Dominican Republic, a few years ago to care for a grandmother who was suffering from Alzheimer's disease, and then was signed out of the Dominican this past international free agent class. He is part of the DSL Orioles Orange, and he was in the lineup today when they faced the Padres Gold and lost 4-1. So Almeida's the guy that we're going to kind of have our eye on, at least initially, because we're starting to get to know some of these players in this first few weeks for us. And I think anybody who really follows these follows these teams, it's going to be a learning curve. But Bob, when you based off of what we know with Almeida so far, what do you think we can expect from him?
I would think he would be a more advanced bat compared to some of the other guys from the same signing class, not just because he signed for a bigger deal and was, more highly acclaimed, but because he grew up in the American, competitive system, at least until he went to the Dominican. So I would think he has a chance to actually be one of the few guys that could get promoted mid-season during the season from the Dominican Summer League to the Florida Coast League. I imagine he's probably pretty polished, but these guys are 16, 17 years old, so it's really, really hard to say. We've seen guys like Luis Gonzalez who were signed for big money at the time, and it's taken a while, and it doesn't seem like it's clicking. But then you see other guys like Steven Acevedo, some other guys that struggle for a couple of years, and then boom, something clicks, get a little bit better. Or Ilya Prado, just kind of like a gradual thing where he got healthy, got consistent playing time, and then just gradually got better and better. And still a long ways to go. So Almeida could quote unquote struggle like Michael Hernandez for 2 years and still be 18 years old and 19 years old and a chance to develop. So the key is to be very patient, but I would expect him to be a little more polished and potentially move a little bit quicker than some guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the hope because he has so much extensive experience. I think I remember, seeing around the signing deadline day, they were kind of talking like he could have pretty much had his pick of any collegiate program in the country to go play for. Like he was that good in high school. But still, yeah, you are talking about a 16-year-old kid. I think he just turned 17. So he's still got a lot to grow physically, mentally as well, just the maturity aspect of it all. I have no doubts that the Orioles got a high character kid here, but at the same time, you're talking about a young teenager where there's a wide range of potential outcomes here with him. But he does have that U.S. playing experience. He should be more advanced than a lot of his peers. And I thought for sure that we would start the year in the FCL because of all that. Yeah, he's got all the background. He could probably hold his own, even though he's only 16, 17 years old in the FCL, because some of those guys, some of his teammates in the FCL, he's probably more advanced than them already. But when you look at that FCL roster, actually now, when I was preparing for this, I mean, you got guys like Michael Hernandez still down there, and we'll dive into this roster later on, but guys like Aaron Estrada are down there, Edwin Amparo, and you got a lot of shortstops already on that FCL roster, and some kind of higher profile guys as well. So yeah, sticking him down in the DSL for a couple of weeks, let him get his feet wet there, let him settle in. And by the end of the year, you'll see him in Sarasota. He could still potentially, I'm thinking best case scenario, he could still be like the opening day shortstop for Delmarva next season as a 18-year-old kid. I wouldn't put that past him as well. So.
Yeah, not at all. And Almeida's bonus, by the way, of $2.3 million, which he received from the Orioles in January, set a new club record, surpassing the $1.9 million that the $1.7 million that Braylon Tavera received before the 2022 season. Now, when you look around the Dominican Summer League rosters, as I mentioned, it's going to be kind of a learning curve for us and for people following the Orioles to try to figure out who these players are and who is going to stand out. For instance, in 2021, we knew nothing about Frederick Bencosme. And then all of a sudden you're checking the box scores a couple months into the season, and this guy is hitting for a high average, walking a ton, and not striking out. Very similar story played out last year with Aaron Estrada, a young infielder who is now in the FCL and showed excellent bat-to-ball skills in the Dominican Summer League last season. Now, with that said, I am going to put the three of us on the spot here. Is there anyone on either Dominican Summer League roster that stands out to you that you're kind of excited to follow this season?
Yes. I got a couple names I listed down here. Just with the bats first, Joshua Lorenzo. I think he got, I don't remember how much money he got. I want to say 600 something like that, or 497, $500,000 basically is what he got. And he was one of, according to Ben Badler, Lorenzo was one of the youngest players in the entire international class last year. The Orioles gave him $500,000. He won't turn 17 until the very end of the season. But he's already got the start today, Monday. He got the start for one of the DSL squads. Went hitless but drew a walk. So clearly the Orioles pretty high on him. I've seen some other, the small discussions that we can find about a lot of these DSL guys. Lorenzo's name pops up pretty much everywhere that I look. So I'm keeping my eye on him. I like catchers. I love catchers a lot. And Ben Badler noted as his sleeper name to watch in this class was a 17-year-old Venezuelan catcher, Omar Urbina. I also just love the last name Urbina, so that helps here. But he talks about how he's an offensive-minded catcher who he's pretty high on the hit tool and the power. So I love offensive catchers. I'll be watching him. But two pitchers I noted here were, I'm going to butcher his first name here, Isel, I'm going to guess, Correa. A Cuban signing. I tweeted out the video again today. There's an awesome video of his reaction of hearing the news that the Orioles are signing him. He cries. It's a beautiful video. I love it. I cry. It's amazing. So I'm 100% rooting for this guy. And then today he threw 3 1/3 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts in his pro debut. So fantastic start there. And then the last one is another pitcher, Keeler Morphe. I think I mentioned him as my guy after the draft class was announced, and we talked about these guys a little bit, but 16 years old, according to Badler, he can already touch 95, has an effortless delivery. He's predicting another jump in velo down the road, already has a feel for the slider, apparently. I am really excited. The few videos I've seen of him, Keeler Morphe and Correa are the two pitchers that I'm going to watch pretty closely.
And Morphe, he's the anti-Elias, 5'9", so a short guy that's got heat, like Pedro Martinez style, I guess. Yeah, I mean,
Alex Pham with a bigger fastball.
Yeah, and he's listed at 155 pounds. If he can already hit 95 at that frame, then shoot, who knows what he's got on in his belt over the years. But yeah, I was gonna say before we wrap this up with the DSL, we should pick this year's Ben Cosme / Aaron Estrada, who's going to be the guy that's like batting 350 and just impressing throughout the entire season. I'm still thinking about who my pick would be, but I'm really interested in Lorenzo as well. He seems like a potential Kobe Mayo type, where it's third base, tall, strong, impressive power and arm with the defense there. I could see him being a fan favorite as the years goes on if he's hitting like, Samuel Basayo type shots from the right side. Got Felix Amparo. I'm not sure if there's any relation to Edwin Amparo, who's in the FCL. Jose Maella, a shortstop. Luis Guevara, a shortstop. Francisco Morao is a pitcher, left-handed pitcher, and more Elias type, 6'2" at 17 years old, left-handed pitcher. He's already up to 91 miles per hour with good control and feel for a spin on the curveball, Ben Badler writes. So he's at least, they don't draft pitchers, right? So you got to sign some from the international to make up for it. But yeah, it's exciting. I can't wait to see which guys become favorites quickly from just looking at the box scores and Instagram posts for highlights. But, this is the start of a bunch of new Orioles careers, and excited to pay attention all along with them.
Yeah, I think the two of you really highlighted some good names there. Morphe was a guy that I've had my eye on since January. I remember seeing clips of his delivery before we did our recap show of the players that were signed on January 15th, and just really liking what I saw, because usually when you see a report about a guy who's that young, hasn't filled out physically yet, throwing that hard, the first thing that, at least for me, comes to mind is his delivery must be really max effort and have a lot of moving pieces to it. That's not the case at all with Morphe. So I really like him a lot. I like Francisco Morales, another guy to keep an eye on. with Luis Guerra, who you just mentioned, Bob. The Orioles talked about at the time how they saw him as a potential top of the order bat, a switch hitter. So someone that I really am interested to see what he can do. And then in a similar vein, a little bit different though, Jose Mejia, who the second baseman has been singled out by the Orioles for his offensive abilities and power projections. So that's someone else that I'd have my eye on. Now, power projections not going to show up in a teenager in the Dominican Summer League unless that teenager's name is Samuel Basallo. But you can still look at certain things over the course of a season, whether it's the walk rate, the strikeout rate, or the WRC plus. And I think start to get some sense of the kind of hitter you're looking at, even without getting too far into scouting the stat line. And I know for us, that's one thing we look at with both short season levels is that walk to strikeout rate with these young hitters, because that can tell us how advanced they are in terms of recognizing pitches and their control of the strike zone.
Yeah, it is very important to note that, especially when we're talking about these guys, we do not know much. We are going off of Fangraphs. Like you said, the walk and strikeout rate for me is like the most important, but also just, keeping an eye on Baseball America for sometimes they'll throw some scouting reports or some updates of people they're seeing, or, like I said, Instagram. Honestly, you'll see some, they're only picking out the highlights because that's fun, but you at least get a glimpse of the swing and the pitches for the pitchers. So yeah, we're working on very little. As guys, I would say just in general, as guys climb up the ladder, the more confident we are in our takes on them. So the guys in AAA, I feel like we have a really good grasp of who they are, and it just gets a little bit more shaky as you go down, with the DSL being the most shaky.
It's still fun though. It's still fun to dive
absolutely.
in here and look at all right, look at their physical profiles, look at what little bit of information we can get. And it's like a puzzle. You're trying to put this together. Like, all right, who is Bob's like, all right, let's take a guess at who is this year's, Frederick Ben Cosme or whatever. Like, I'm sitting over here looking at Luis Guevara, over 5'8", 167 is what he's listed at. Switch hitting shortstop at 17 years old. And Ben Badler's write-up from a couple of weeks ago said this is a guy with a knack for putting the ball in play plus speed, good chance to stick at shortstop, high baseball IQ, good contact skills. So I see a guy who's not going to hit many home runs, but he's going to hit 350 down there in the DSL with good walk strikeout numbers and be in the FCL by the end of the season. That's something, someone to keep an eye on. I mean, it's fun to look back and figure, all right, who hit, who didn't, and then who are the true Aaron Estradas that kind of pop up here out of nowhere. And then, we bring Kobe Perez back on, he's name dropping guys that we've never even heard of. And it's like, oh, he throws 100 miles an hour. That's cool. It'd be great if someone out there would publish some of this information.
Yeah. So is that your pick then?
That's what I'm going with. I'm going with Guevara. I don't know why. That's just sticking out to me.
I'll go with Abraham Cohen. He's an outfielder out of Venezuela. He signed for $137,000. Ben Badler writes, Cohen's hitting ability has been his calling card. At 6'1", 175 pounds, he's an easy sound swing that translates well in games where he finds the barrel often with gap power. So I'll go with him. And yeah, it's fun. Like you said, I feel like even we noticed Ben Cosme a little bit just from the way we quote unquote scout these DSL guys, and Aaron Estrada, obviously the way he was performing stood out. But I feel like even Basallo, when we saw his Instagram videos of his home runs, we were like, okay, this guy is legit. It seems like, as long as he can continue to perform. So yeah, I think Lorenzo and I'll go with Cohen are my preseason favorites, and we'll see how it develops.
Since Guevara and Lorenzo are off the board, I'll go ahead and take Mejia as my guy there, but I think all three are worthy choices. We'll go now to the Florida Complex League, and their season got underway today with a 7-2 loss to the FCL Red Sox, yet the performance of one prospect in particular stood out, and that was Zach Showalter. The right-hander delivered 3 shutout innings in the start, no walks, 2 hits, and 6 strikeouts. Showalter is a guy we've been hearing a little bit about since last summer when he was drafted by the Orioles, but he did not pitch last year after being drafted. So making his professional debut this spring after being drafted out of Wesley Chapel High School down in Wesley Chapel, Florida in the 11th round. So going to get a chance now to follow Walter in his development. But Nick, I'll start with you here. Is this a guy that you think we're going to be talking about a lot this summer?
I mean, you kick off your first ever pro start the way he did, the 6 strikeouts in 3 innings. I'd say, yeah. I remember seeing an 11th round draft pick, and that was the start of like day 3 or something of the draft. And I believe he was the top name available on the board. Orioles took him. You know, he's a Florida high school pitcher, but he wasn't like a UF commit, University of Florida commit. He wasn't a Florida State commit. And I remember after the draft thinking, all right, he's a South Florida commit. Right. This is fine. It's a guy that they seem to really like, obviously. So let's see what he can do. But I don't see him being a guy that we get our eyes on personally for a couple of years, kind of like a project type guy. But some of the video, I know he put out a video, I think in like extended spring training or something. This was a couple of months ago. He put out a video. The slider was already a beautiful pitch. That thing's getting guys out in low A, that slider that he was throwing in this video. Without a doubt. And I know some of the little bit of information we have about him was hoppy fastball. I mean, the key word here, it's like, apparently the fastball has got like extreme ride on it. And that's a pitch that I think I've seen a couple of places say potentially a plus pitch for him. And if the slider is already as good as what some of the videos he's putting out, yeah. I mean, he's still 18 or is he 19 now? I don't know how old he is. 18, 19-year-old, still a young teenage kid, but I mean, just look at the Orioles track record of high school picks. When they go after a high school kid, I am paying extra close attention because they seem to be doing a pretty good job with these guys so far.
Yeah, I didn't even have to read a scouting report to know he had a hoppy fastball because the Orioles drafted him. So, yeah, I feel like he's one of these rare cases of a guy who's been building hype without even playing. You see videos of him and he looks really impressive. That Eric Garfield is putting out, correct? Eric Garfield, you are seeing on his Twitter feed, Zach Showalter all over the place. He's looking great. And yeah, the first start of the season was great as well. So, I would not be shocked if he's in Delmarva before the end of the season. If Carter Baumler and Zach Showalter are in the same Delmarva rotation at some point towards the end of the season, that would be very exciting. So yeah, I'm very high on him. And honestly, the FCL roster as a whole, it seems pretty stacked for me, even with guys just on rehab assignments that I've been wondering where they were. Well, here they are: Ryan Higgins, Trenton Craig, Greg Cullen, and the pitchers maybe not as impressive as the hitters, but it's a deep, impressive roster, and I'm very excited to see how it plays out all year.
Yeah, Bob, that's a good point. And if you look at the box score from Monday's contest, you see a lot of the rehab assignment guys getting at bats: Greg Cullen, Trenton Craig, Ryan Higgins. But as you know, the roster is pretty deep. So going through that group, what names stand out to you?
Let's see. I will say Michael Hernandez. He obviously has struggled quite a bit after being one of the big signings out of the past few years, international classes. Again, shout out to Eric Garfield. He apparently looks a lot better this spring into summer, and I'm curious to see if that's going to translate into games. Let's see, Aaron Estrada finally going to be stateside, and if he's as good as Ben Cosme, then he could also reach Delmarva before the season is over. Christian Benavidez and Alfredo Velasquez, I feel like are guys who didn't have the big name value as far as at the top of a list when it comes to international signing dollar amounts. But those guys played really well last year. Edwin Amparo, he's on our top 50 list. Raylan Ramos showed flashes. Braylon Tavera, obviously, almost forgot about him like Nick did on his top 50 list. And even Kevin Guerrero, guys like that, Junior Lara, who are in their second year now in the FCL, can they make, a difference and continue their development? So honestly, it's just like 1 through 9. I feel like the lineup's going to be an interesting name.
Yeah, Hernandez is the tough one. He's still only 19, and I feel like we've been talking about him for 5 years now at this point, though, because he's struggled so much since he joined the organization. But, you you look at his numbers last year in the FCL, he had a strikeout rate of like 33.7%, WRC plus of 51, but he's also still only 19 years old. And so I'm going to give him another year. I'm not going to say this is a make or break year for him because he's still a teenager, but you've got to see something from Michael Hernandez, being that this is year 3 in the organization. And they already came out. Kobe Perez himself already came out late last year and said that the Orioles are tinkering with his game. And so now, is that coming out in game action, right? Is he actually improving? Because right now the numbers have been pretty awful up to this point. So he's got to show something this year. But at the same time, like Samuel Basallo looks great. Ben Cosme looks great. A lot of his classmates from that signing class look fantastic. So if he doesn't pan out, it's not a, oh man, that was a terrible signing class. That signing class is still looking like a fantastic class. Basallo potentially going to be a top 10 prospect by the end of the year in this system. So let's see. Hopefully year 3, he shows something. I think Edwin Amparo is going to be kind of a sleeper here because you look at the numbers in the DSL last year, he was one of the few guys. There are a lot of guys last year who the early, I think OPS by month was like 560 OPS, and then he went to a 503 OPS, but then he went to a 1017 OPS. Also hit his first 2 home runs those last 2 months of the year. I think he's got, I think Zach's been the higher one on him on our list. I kind of removed him from my top 50 as we saw these new draft classes and stuff come in, but I just think he's going to get a fair shake this year. When you got him and Leandro Arias down there in the FCL right now, Arias is the bigger name guy, getting more national love, but I think Edwin Amparo is the guy who sticks out, at least statistically, this season. Pitching wise, well, I got to talk about the outfielders real quick. There's a trio, and I hope something comes of these trio.
Real quick.
Go ahead.
I did forget Leandro Arias. That's because he's not on the roster. Yeah. Thanks a lot, MILB.
Yeah, Arias is in Sarasota, but the outfield trio of Thomas Sosa, Raylan Ramos, and Braylon Tavera, like Sosa has incredible raw power. I'm scared about if there's much more there, but incredible raw power. Ramos hit really well in the DSL last year and had the good strikeout to walk numbers, good OPS, really good final month of the year as well. I'm excited to see if he can put something together. But Tavera, like I still don't know. I'm still on the wait and see train with Tavera because pretty much everything you read about him, right? It's no one's like super high on him. It's always kind of like he's there. He's, average hitter, average power, below average arm. I think is how Baseball America has described him. And the numbers in the DSL were okay. A lot of strikeouts last year, but he also drew a ton of walks. He had like a 411 on base percentage. So I think the Tavera signing is a lot like, I kind of comparing that to a lot of the trade targets the Orioles have had over the last couple of years. Consensus doesn't have him very highly ranked, but something in his skill set fits what the Orioles preach, and the Orioles think that they can get a lot more out of him. And so hopefully something clicks here now that he's stateside, and more people are like, hey, like check this guy out. I like the outfield there. Hopefully those guys, at least one of them really breaks out. But pitching, just some guys who put up good DSL numbers that I'm anxious to see. Brian Batista had 48 strikeouts and 43 innings in the DSL as an 18-year-old, only walked 10 guys. Luis De Leon is a lefty, a 6'3 lefty, who had 45 strikeouts to just 13 walks and 28 innings. The ERA was over 5, but he had a whip of about 1 and a 165 average against. So those are kind of weird numbers to see overall, but 6'3 lefty, I'm intrigued. And then Harif Faris was a DSL All-Star last year, I believe. 51 strikeouts, 31 innings. But it was his 3rd year in the DSL, and he's 22 now. So he's an older guy, but maybe just a late bloomer. We'll see. But yeah, I agree with Bob. I'm more intrigued by the hitters than the pitchers, but there are definitely some, I think every single day, I was going to say night, but 11 a.m. over there. Every single day, you're going to see a lineup 1 through 9. That's pretty impressive. And a good chunk of the top 50 guys on the team.
Yeah, and if I could just real quick shout out a couple other pitchers. Just looking at the list of ones that stand out to me just based off of what they did last year. Aris Rodriguez, I think, is an interesting arm. Brainer Sanchez, Jose Ramirez. I know Junior Pena can throw really hard. Let's see if he can put it together. Jose Leandro, I feel like he was a super young guy that had some impressive numbers. Yeah, he had a 1.91 ERA over 28 innings with 36 strikeouts as a 20-year-old last year. And Anthony Murillo, he was a guy that I was looking forward to seeing last year, but unfortunately, he was hurt. In 2021, he pitched in 9 games in the DSL and had a 2.65 ERA over 34 innings with 45 strikeouts and only 8 walks. So curious to see what he can do now that he's apparently healthy again. So there's nothing like that stands out as guys you must watch every time out, except for maybe Zach Showalter and Raul Rangel if he can get back on track. But there's still some interesting names on the mound as well.
Yeah, I'll just chime in real quick with thoughts about Kevin Guerrero, who was part of the return for Tanner Scott and Cole Salser from the Marlins at the end of spring training in 2022. Guerrero had performed really well for the Marlins in the Dominican Summer League as a 17-year-old in 21. Was a guy that, had some expectations around him going into the FCL last year, and unfortunately, he didn't deliver on them. While he walked just over 20% of the time, he also struck out over 34% of the time and had a 65 WRC plus. I think, Nick, what you were saying earlier about Michael Hernandez and wanting to be patient with him, that's kind of how I feel about Guerrero. First year in a new organization, moving stateside, moving up to the next level, only being 18 years old. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's one of those guys that sounds like the raw skill set could really be interesting. Center fielder, looks like he's got some projection, can run. I just noted the walk rate, so he clearly has a good eye at the plate, but has got to cut back on the strikeouts from last year. That really was what undid him offensively. But only 19 years old, so hopefully he's able to get going at the plate this year.
Yeah, I had wrote his name down here too, just because the numbers weren't good last year. But you mentioned the age, and for me, what stood out was I think right after the trade happened, and we're like, all right, who are these guys? And I think I remember seeing someone that commented like Kevin Guerrero when he was with the Marlins organization as a 16, 17-year-old was playing games in like extended spring or something, one of their camps or something like that. He was playing against like the high A, AA kids. So the Marlins were super aggressive with him in practices and offseason stuff. And I'm like, all right, well, this is clearly a sign the Marlins are high on him. So my expectations were pretty high for him last year. He didn't live up to them, but that was the Marlins organization. Like he's an Oriole now. They're going to tweak what they want to tweak, mold him how they want him molded, and let's see what he can do this year. But that whole trade, like even if Guerrero doesn't pan out, you got Guerrero, Antonio Velez. Velez is not going to pan out. But you also got Judd Fabian in that trade, and that's end of discussion right there. Still a great trade, even if Guerrero and Velez don't end up panning out. So, yeah, I like the Guerrero pick as well.
We'll go now to our final segment of the show where we shout out a player outside of our top 30 list for something they've done recently, whether it's been a good game, a good week, or it's just something interesting that we see in the stat line that we want to point out. And I'm going to start with Bob, who wants to welcome back a guy that I think is a fan favorite among Orioles prospect followers, as well as a couple of pitchers.
Yeah, the pitchers I picked in combination, just because I feel like they're having similar successes and similar issues. I'll start with the pitchers. It's Dylan Hyde, who's pitching for the Aberdeen Ironbirds. Keegan Gillis is getting all the attention because he's only given up one hit with 21 strikeouts and 3 walks on the year. Well deserving. But Dylan Hyde also has a 3.29 ERA over 13 2/3 innings. He's walked 8 batters, which is the bad thing, but he struck out 28. So that's like Felix Bautista level, K to 9. So shout outs to him. And then the other guy, we talked about the Jonathan VR trade. So why not talk about the Freddie Galvis trade too? Tyler Birch for AA Bowie, under the radar, having a pretty strong start to the season. 2.57 ERA over 14 innings with 8 walks again, but 13 strikeouts. And, we heard about his slider, I feel like, during that trade, and that's his carrying tool. And so far in 2023, it's working for him. But yeah, my hitter is Toby Welk, who is coming back from an injury to start the season. I'm guessing working his way back to AA Bowie, who could use the help. But in his first week of rehab games for Delmarva, he was 4 for 14 with 2 walks, and it seemed like the hits started to come closer to the end of the week. So nice to see him back in action. Hopefully we can get some more of these injured guys back before long as well.
Sounds like we're going to get a big chunk of injured guys back in the next week or so, which is going to make the transactions even more fun that we were talking about at the top of the show. But yeah, I'm going to go my hitter, Carter Young. 412 average last week with a double, a home run, only one walk, but he only had one strikeout as well, which I think was the most impressive for me. So small sample, 1121 OPS over that week, but he's trending up. He had a 474 OPS in April. That went up to 640 OPS in May. Now he's on this impressive run that he went on last week to kind of end May, begin June. I think he was that Sunday. I think he was 4 for 4. They might have all four been singles, but still 4 for 4 day at the plate. It's been a tough start for Carter Young, but like we've mentioned before, I mean, this is a project. A lot of questions about the bat. Is it legit or not? He's got a lot of people who don't believe in him. He's got a lot of people who do believe in him. Who is he? Hopefully he's starting to show us more the true Carter Young with this recent stretch he's on. But in my pitchers, Cooper Chandler, a shout out to him. I'm moving away from the quad A guys up in Norfolk and going down a little younger this week. It's more fun. Cooper Chandler, undrafted free agent out of Rice. So again, this is a Texas themed show. I feel like he allowed one run across 5 innings with 1 walk and 7 strikeouts in a start with Aberdeen last week. He's now has 9 appearances with Aberdeen, a 3.31 ERA, 38 strikeouts, just 11 walks in 32 innings. And I get big time like Daniel Fetterman vibes from him. This undrafted arm who you think maybe gets up to Aberdeen in Aberdeen's bullpen and like that's his ceiling. But they hit Aberdeen and they just keep getting better. They move into the rotation and you're like, what are they doing? Oh yeah, the strikeouts are through the roof. Cooper Chandler starting to trend towards that. So I'm impressed. Shout out to Cooper Chandler on a great week, and hopefully he's got my attention now. And hopefully he does continue on that Daniel Fetterman track there. We see him with 80 strikeouts in 50 innings this year.
Good choices from both of you. For my hitter this week, I'm shouting out Dante Williams, who was excellent in Bowie's series against Harrisburg last week. 6 games, he went a total of 9 for 18 to plate, so batting .500 with 5 doubles, 6 RBI, 3 walks to 4 strikeouts. That stretch included 2 3-hit games, including his 3 for 5 performance in Sunday's finale. Williams has been delivering as advertised on defense with some excellent plays for Bowie's outfield this year. However, he's followed up a really up and down offensive season in 2022 with some real struggles at the plate in 2023. Nonetheless, he comes into the first full week of June with a .329 on base percentage. So hopefully everything else starts to fall into place for him and we see the offensive production tick up a little bit here over the summer months. And then for my pitcher, I'm going to shout out a guy who got into 2 games for Aberdeen last week, but I want to highlight one of those performances in particular, and that is Dan Hammer. Hammer pitched 2 scoreless innings behind Gene Pinto in their game back on June 1st, where Aberdeen's pitching staff held the Renegades bats to just 2 hits over 9 innings of work. Hammer had 3 strikeouts and 2 scoreless innings with a walk. His strikeout numbers this season have been really good. He's spanned 19 batters and 11 1/3 innings pitched. Walks have been high. That has been a problem for him, but a good outing last week in an impressive pitching performance for Aberdeen against a lineup that has given Aberdeen some problems off and on over the course of this season, and he continues to pile up impressive strikeout numbers.
Like,
It's Hammer time.
I'm glad you brought up Dante Williams, because if you weren't, I was going to, only because hopefully I feel like he's had a couple of games this year where he's like 2 for 2 with 2 walks or 3 for 3 with a walk. And then I'm like, oh, is Dante Williams heating up? And I look at his splits and I'm like, he's not. The batting average is still like barely 100. But he is trending up these last couple of weeks. And I think it was the game he made another fantastic diving play in the outfield. He's got like 5 or 6 of these already. And then he hit his first home run later in that game. I'm like, man, if he could just get hot. And I don't want to put you guys on the spot because this is a tough question, but maybe a future episode, or if you've got something now, we can have fun with it. But I was like, if you could give any prospect in this system, like the tool from another player, like what would it be? And I'm not saying my answer would be giving Dante Williams like a better hit tool, but if I could give Dante Williams like a Colton Cowser hit tool, Dante Williams would be a top 15 prospect in this system, I think. So I wish that bat would just come around for good, because he's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, the defense and speed certainly plays. Let's give him Heston Kjerstad's bat since he's the star of this show. I think that would do pretty well. Basically, give him any good bat, and I think he's looking a lot better. But you never know; he can still turn it around.
Yeah, absolutely. And as for, I think if you give Colton Cowser Dante Williams, or you give Dante Williams Colton Cowser's hit tool, he's a top 15 prospect overall in baseball. With the center field defense that he has, the ability to hit for average, the power, the walk rate, that's a top 15 prospect in all of baseball.
Just not Colton Cowser's strikeout rate, right? Because it's so awful.
Yeah, hashtag Colton Cowser problem. And I think Nick has given us a good topic for a future show. We will be back next week with more Orioles minor league coverage. We're going to talk about any news that comes out over the next week on the Major League and minor league side. In the meantime, give us a follow on Twitter at BSL and The Verge. And while you're there, consider joining our Patreon community, where you can sign up for as little as $3 a month and have access to a WhatsApp group, and at $5 and $10 levels have access to bonus daily content and our monthly top 50 prospect update list. And be sure to head over to BaltimoreSportsandLife.com, where you can check out the latest coverage on the Orioles, Ravens, college sports, and more. When you're over at BSL, be sure to hop on the message board and join the discussion with fellow readers of the site as well as contributors. For Bob Phil and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to On the Verge.